Yeah, so besides psychology, right, I teach business, I teach marketing, management, international business. So, I'm a psychologist, an international psychologist. I go across the country, I go across the world essentially, and build programs for different cultures, impoverished people, education programs, mental health programs, etc. But I'm more of a business person in the sense that I use all those tools to invest, right? Real estate, I do venture capital, so I buy out small companies. Essentially, I'll take like 50 to 51% control, kind of sit back and just guide the businesses, right? If I find them to be something worthwhile investing in. I used to do like business consulting too, which is like, hey, we need your help and we want to open up XYZ business in this place. We need to know the government regulations, how to do the business plan, the marketing plan, how to advertise, how to promote, how to actually create demand for different cultures, people, et cetera. Yeah, so anyway, back to the point. I got property in LA. So LA is one of the places, and LA is probably my favorite place. So if I wasn't here in Chicago, right now, I'd be in Southern California. Anyway, stress and health and well-being. Stress. I only heard one person say that they had stress. Is that true? Who else has stress right now? Tell me why you got stress. Yes, why?
Just with school and then balancing like sports and academics.
Tell me about the school. What are you stressed out about?
Well, just like upcoming exams and just that like the semester's like starting to like come to an end, so like deadlines are starting to come for like final projects.
So things are starting to pile on. You're trying to figure out. Okay. Who else? Stress. That's it? You want to add something?
No, I was just saying I was stressed too.
All right. Stress is universal. Right? There's not one person in this class or in the entire world without stress. Right? Today we want to talk about what is stress and how does it manifest. How can we regulate it? And we said the good life is the means in between. It's neither too extreme or too complacent about something. What's your definition of stress? Create a generic definition. What's stress to you?
Feeling overwhelmed?
Overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. Okay. What else? Stress. Overwhelmed about what?
Circumstances.
Okay. Life in general. Circumstances. All right. How's it created? What's the big elephant in the room when it comes to stress? We just said, okay, life circumstances. Overwhelmed. Who creates it? Who creates the stress for you? Yes? You do, right? Stress is just nothing more than your reaction to this stuff. And we all have a different reaction to things, right? Hey, they dropped a nuclear bomb in Ukraine. They blew the entire country. Who here is going to be stressed about it losing that? Right? That's a good question. Who knows? It may actually be some people not stressed. They're like, oh, I'm glad it didn't happen to me. Let me keep doing what I got to do with my life. That's a reality, right? We say we have the shadow, which is our true thoughts, not the BS that we put on in front of everybody. Right? It's all about kind of being more honest with yourself. So our reactions to circumstances, events, life, things are completely different based on our values and whether we feel indifferent about things. I care less. So I'll start with, there's an old book written in the 1940s by a French author, philosopher, Albert Camus, called The Stranger. Anybody ever read the book The Stranger? Or seen the movie or anything? Alright, so quick summary. In the book, there's a guy named Marcel. And the book starts off, he's like, Mom died yesterday, right? It's like, or was it the day before? So the book sets the tone of like, hey, this dude doesn't even care. He doesn't really focus about when his mom died, he just knows she died, right? You know, if it's yesterday, the day before. So throughout the book, he's indifferent about everything. He can care less. He has a girlfriend that wants to get engaged and married and all this stuff, and she asks him, does he love her? He's like, not really, you know? And so through all the people that kind of interact with him through his life are appalled by him. Like, this person just is indifferent, doesn't care about literally anything. So later on in the book, for some odd reason, he kills this guy, right? So now he has to face judgment from society, he has to go to jail, they imprison him. Now he's convicted, he's gonna face death, they give him the death penalty. And so the priest comes in and talks to him and like, you know, you need to repent, do you believe in God? All this other stuff. He's like, no, I could care less about any of that stuff. And the priest like has an outburst, right? It's like, how could you not believe you kill people, you don't care about anything, how could you not care about nothing in your entire life? And they keep trying to force him to care. He's completely indifferent about everything, all the way up to his death. And kind of like the final thing he says, as they're about to, put him to death, he's just like, the only thing he wished for was more hate. He just wished that more people would have hated him in life. Right? So, interesting perspective, right? Let's just say that's 1 out of a billion people that actually can live life that way. Point is, Marcel may have faced no stress in life whatsoever. You do, because you care. You care about what you care about, right? You place a value on things that others do not. So we all are individuals when it comes to our relationship with stress, based on what you care about, how you value it, and the degree of value, right? So that's how we'll start off to try to understand our health, and then how do we flourish in life, right? And flourishing is subjective, obviously, right? It's depending on you and what you think flourishing in life is. But we want to say balance, right? Life is about balance. Happiness. Let's just start with that. What is happiness? Anybody throw out a generic definition of their idea of happiness? What is happiness to you? Who here is happy right now? No? Who here is unhappy? Yeah, you guys are neither, right? But what's happiness? Philosophical question. What's happiness? What's happiness to you? Anyone, what's happiness? Right? We may struggle with finding out what happiness is, because that's like me asking what is love. And we'll get a billion different answers on that. Right? Let's just say happiness is some sort of satisfaction in your state of being about that, right? Your overall state of being, that you're satisfied with it overall. But then I ask you, if things are taken away, if things are changed, will you no longer be happy? If they kick you out of Concordia today, you're like, oh, they kicked me out of school, they banned me from school. Will that change your happiness, right? If your parents kick you out the house and you're homeless and you gotta find somewhere to live, would that change your happiness? You go completely broke and you struggle just to pay like minimum of bills. Would that change your happiness? Therefore, we could say happiness might be based on the same things. Life, circumstances, and events, right? But then we might say, well, all this stuff and someone's still completely happy, then that's a different person. That's a person who's truly happy with self, right? They may not have a measuring stick to others. They may not say, oh, this person's great and this person's a loser. They may not live life that way. They may say, hey, I don't want that much. You know, I don't need that much. I don't want to do that. I don't value that. I don't have an interest in that. That goes back to Maslow's trying to get to the top of the pyramid of self-transcendence. When we move things, the people, the circumstances, the events, all your stuff, you start to say like, oh, you know what, that was cool, but that's the past. That's just something I did, right? All these different things you gained and accomplished, and all these different titles and degrees and money. Life goes beyond that. But in the real world, yes, happiness and health are related, right? Because it does relate to life, circumstances, events, things you guys want to do to feel a sense of worth. So if we look at this, we could say that stress, we could give it different words, right? We could call it anxiety. We could call it anxiety, we could say it's anxiousness, right? Same root, but it involves us being anxious about something. Hey, I got an exam tomorrow. I'm super anxious about getting all this stuff done. Right? Is that is being anxious positive or negative in your viewpoint? Is it helpful or harmful to be anxious? Let's say you're anxious about something right now. Your next class, doing some assignment, right? You gotta get to work. Being anxious, right? You gotta win that game. You gotta perform well. Is being anxious positive or is that negative? Both? Tell me how.
Well, being anxious can kind of like help you realize that something may be wrong, or like it kind of makes you aware of what, like it kind of helps you think about what might be causing it. So it can kind of cause like some like realization, and then negative, it can just have like negative effects. You can just like it can affect your ability to like function or like communicate.
Excellent. Right, it can help you be aware or realize something, in which turn it can help you focus. Because if you weren't anxious about it, you might not do it. You might not do it well, right? So it has a degree. We could say there's a degree of good and there's a degree of bad. So basically it has some sort of metric to it, a measurement of it, right? In its negative form, you can say, well, it helped me, my anxiety or being anxious actually helped me perform worse. Why? Because you had too much of it, right? Going back to balance, right? Balance is the key of life. Too much of anything is bad, too little of anything is bad too. Somewhere down the middle, right? Now on a biological level, on a physiological level, let me just say this first. So if we think about stress or being anxious as it relates to health, overall health or mental health, we can think of it as the foundation of a house, right? We drive down the street, we see a gorgeous home. We drive a river forest because they have a lot of beautiful homes. See these big old mansions, they're gorgeous, right? And we pay all this money for it because we see how gorgeous it is. We get in, we realize it has faulty foundations. Actually, the house is gonna fall down within a short period of time. That is exactly what stress is in our existence, out in society. There's a faulty foundation, right? When we said 90% is subconscious, we operate every day, 10% is conscious. So if you have a horrible subconscious, a faulty foundation, that 10% of all your creative ideas and how all these wonderful thoughts and things that, you know, make you want to actually do things in the world, they will crumble. Because the underlying principle there is to give a faulty foundation. So with that being said, it affects our actual physiological body. It affects our biology, which is stress actually kills people, right? It's probably one of the only things that concepts we can think of like how we can actually terminate ourselves without doing anything, without like picking up a gun or jumping off a building. Like literally, our minds can kill us. Our minds can kill us because stress dictates the response to other parts of the body. Stress works with your immune system. So let's say you're like, man, I caught a cold. I don't normally catch colds. What's up? Why I catch this cold? You're probably stressed out. It means your immune system is weak right now because of all these negative thoughts you have about things. You have too many of them, right? You have too much anxiety, a high degree of anxiety. Stress causes cancer. We said only 10% of cancers are genetic, right? Coming down from mom and dad, grandpa, grandma, whoever. The rest of cancers are actually most likely caused by habits, right? And most likely our minds. They're caused by stress, prolonged periods of stress over time. So stress kills people, right? Stress ages you, makes you look old, right? Stress harms your physical health by making you gain weight. Stress creates obesity. So you're sending all these signals to your body about there's too much negative things going on. Your body's handling that. It's like, okay, we're handling it, but it's probably going to harm you later on. So your mind literally can kill you. So it hurts your motivation. It hurts your resilience to things. Like you said, like resilience to bacteria, to viruses. We all got viruses in us now. We all have bacteria within us now, right now as we speak. Only thing keeping us healthy is our response to the bacteria, right? A lot of us have healthy responses, others of us do not have a healthy response to it. So the negative part of it being extreme or prolonged, right? Risky decision making and unhealthy behaviors create a lot of stress. So it's a reaction to it. Here it is, give an example, sort of showing a stressful event, right? It's a tough math test. In which case, your mind, you appraise that. And we said, do you value it? Is of interest, or do you care? So you can say, yikes, this is beyond me. Or you can say, oh, it's a challenge. I gotta apply all that I know to it, right? You take a more positive approach, or you take the negative. The key is positivity prolongs life, right? There's numerous of studies that show that people who are more positive throughout life tend to live longer, right? And not all professions, depending on what career you guys want to go into, are helpful to prolonging life, right? There's a lot of tax accountants and lawyers have a very short lifespan because of the amount of stress brought on by the job. It leads to heart attacks, strokes, heart disease, obesity, drug habits, et cetera, et cetera. So we appraise it. We say, okay, wow, this is a value, or we say, I'm gonna look at a negative, I'm gonna look at a positive. Right? Stress to a distraction, this leads to arousal and focus, right? The one that's leading to a benefit, the other one's going to harm you as time goes on. Some stressors, catastrophes, large-scale disasters, culture of stress, significant life changes, right? We say mom or dad kicked you out of the house, immediately you're stressed out because now you have to problem solve where to live, right? You get fired from your job, immediately you're shocked, right? Because now you have to figure out how you're gonna make money. Or a cluster of crises. Let's say you failed 4 classes in one semester. Like that would be an entire cluster of the crises you have to fail, So too much happening at once. Little tiny daily hassles every day compounded by prejudice and life circumstances. My dissertation dealt with like racial and ethnic discrimination of South Africans because of apartheid. and kind of like the effects of post-apartheid, right? Which means like, hey, they don't wanna give me a job, why? They don't like my background, they don't like them because I'm black or something, you know, or because I'm Asian, because I'm female, because whatever. Those are stresses within daily life, you know, where you just face discrimination for whatever reason. You're tall, you're short, it doesn't matter, right? It's not just like a racial thing, but you know, you could be perceived certain ways. And we said we live in a world full of biases for whatever stupid reason people come up. So, yes, daily hassles lead to a lot of stress. And we say if the environment is not conducive and your daily hassles just go on, and you can't really get out of them, we'll use poverty for an example. Let's just say you grew up in a poor environment, right? You grew up in an impoverished environment. You say, you know, there wasn't a lot of money here, so how do people make money? You're like, oh no, they sold drugs. They sold drugs, and then sometimes people got caught, they went to jail, right? Or they had to steal to get things they need. A lot of negativity in the environment in which you live. A lot of negativity causes stress, underlying stress. So therefore you think, well, also in these poor economic areas, people tend to have a lot of obesity. Like, why are people obese? Because there's a high correlation to stress with obesity, right? And obviously the choice is made by the type of restaurants in the area, right? Type of, the lack of healthy options, right? Grocery stores, things like that. So stress is brought on by life circumstances, compounded by prejudice and things of the like. So they have both psychological and physical consequences. So we can't just think of like, oh, stress causes obesity, stress causes heart disease, stress causes cancer. Stress actually messes with your memory. I can't focus. You know, stress also harms your cognitive abilities. Like, man, I can't really understand what I'm reading. I can't understand what I'm learning, what I think I should be trying to learn, right? Because we said the foundations are cracked, right? The foundations are cracked. It's gonna be hard trying to build the most gorgeous of buildings on top of it. Looks gorgeous, but it's useless, right? So there's psychological, depression, right? All these different disorders brought on by stress. So we have response systems within our body, right? Cannon response, which is stress response is part of a unified mind-body system. The mind and the body operates together. Remember we say mind is not in the brain, mind is a concept. It's your perception of the world. Tell me about your world. Your world may be completely different than mine, even though we're right here in the same space. Because it's based off all of your experiences, your ideology, what you accepted to be true, what you accepted to be false. What do you believe in? What do I believe in? Right? So different responses, right? Fight or flight, we all have that adaptive response to crises. Cellier response, which is general adaptation syndrome. Phase 1 is alarm reaction, 2 resistance, 3 exhaustion. Which means we back to is a metric. You could deplete the amount of resources to handle the stress. Right? So your body gets a response. Like, okay, we have stress. We need to focus, we need to shift, we need to adapt, we need to handle this. Right? Now, if not managed well, then the body goes off the rails. I say, I'm sending these amount of resources, this is all the amount of resources that can handle this particular type of stress. Now, if it's prolonged and it's not handled correctly, the body crashes, the mind crashes, and people have breakdowns all of the time. So, like the billionaire commits suicide if he has $1 billion, right? Money is supposed to solve all of the problems of life. Apparently it does not, right? So, crises, underlying crises, we see the person, we see them happy, we see them with all the stuff they have, they're successful, they're doing all the things we want. to do, and we think they're okay, and they're not okay, right? That subconscious has a lot of that shadow we talked about. So you get exhausted, and exhaustion can lead to things like suicide, heavy depression, being placed in mental institutions, giving up. You're not gonna give up, it's too much, it's too hard, right? You give up, you're exhausted. Because the body can only send so many amount of resources, be it mental resources or physical resources to handle a crisis. The human body copes well with temporary stress, but may be damaged by prolonged stress. Yeah, you have an exam, but after exam, you moved on to something else, right? Short-term stress, like I got an exam coming up. After the exam, you move on, okay? You're not waiting for the same exam for 20 years and stressed out about it. That would be a prolonged stress. That'd be a major issue for you. Here to give an example, stress and illness due to the ongoing conflict. They were referring to Syria. Syria's white helmets, volunteer rescuers, are perpetually in alarm reaction mode, rushing to pull victims from the rubble after each fresh attack. As their resistance is depleted, they risk exhaustion. There's gender differences in coping with strategies, earlier death issues, tend to be friend response and withdrawal. So how, based on our gender, we do have different responses. Women tend to be a little bit more agreeable than men, right? Which is, in capacities of like leadership, managers, executives, men often tend to do better because they have less likelihood of agreeableness, right? We're just averaging things out, right? On average. So there's a tend to be friend response, right? Which is handles stresses differently in certain circumstances. Earlier death. If a person, let's say due to this one, let's say this, people, you guys are pretty familiar with the Syrian conflict. The things that were happening with the Syrian-Iraqi war. You guys, are you familiar? Right, in Syria, they're basically a political vacuum. Syria just went into chaos, disarray. All these different groups took up arms and started committing atrocities, right? So basically, you're capturing people, you're beheading people, you're recording and putting it on the internet, and trying to get ransom from people. The same old stuff that happens within the war. Right? And you gotta have people there to actually help people in conflict to rescue, to help save people. Right? Now, if you're coming into places and you see these catastrophes, imagine you're a rescuer at 9/11, right, at the Twin Towers. You have to go rescue people, and you see mangled bodies, decapitated bodies, mutilated things, people in pain. There's a crisis for you. You know, how are you gonna handle that, even though you're trying to do a good thing? Which means there's only so much you can see, right, before you go off the rails. So here they're talking about the volunteers. As their resistance is depleted, they risk exhaustion, which means that they hit their limit, right? So you have to manage those rescuers a certain way so that they don't hit their limits too. There's a whole rescue option, the whole rescue strategy is compromised. But here's talk about earlier death in the family. Those who've experienced death in their lifetime, like someone dying close to them, has a higher degree of threshold to cope with death, right? Just like anything else in life, experience helps you cope. Now, someone is fresh to the experience of death, close in their family. You lose a mother, you lose a father, a brother, a sister, a child, which means that type of stress can shut down the body, can shut down the mind. That person can be useless for a very long time. Another person who's actually had experience with it, helps them cope, helps them manage. They're able to move on and continue life as it was. So we have coping. Which is interesting, it seems like the book doesn't necessarily talk too much about coping and defense, which we all have too. We have strategies to defend. Let's just say even in an argument, you have an argument with someone. You already have a means to cope with the things they're saying and a means to defend yourself, even though things can be completely biased and completely wrong. But the book doesn't talk too much of that. Maybe I'll bring that up later. Here they just give a graph of stress resistance, low stress resistance, high stress stress occurring in different phases. We said alarm phase, mobilize resources to handle it. Resistance, we help cope with it. There's only so much, you get the exhaustion, the reserves are depleted to help with it. Right? Body's resistance, stress can only last long before exhaustion proves it. Health psychology, which is another field that deals with psychology that provides psychological contribution to behavioral medicine, which we talked about, just trying to understand how the mind deals with stress and disease and illnesses, and how that both are positive and negative depending on the reaction. And this one is just deals with the immune system. Stress can help fight disease. Stress can help make disease more harmful, trigger immune suppression, delay surgical wound healing. So stress can cause you to heal slower, right, from injuries or even surgeries. Increase vulnerability to cold, hasten disease course, right? Stress doesn't cause the illness, right? We think of cancers and viruses and disease and bacteria, but it does alter immune functioning that reduces the ability to resist infection. Here, let's give an example of possible responses, positive and negative. Different type, cancer, heart disease, inflammation. Here, anger management. Maybe Will Smith could have benefited from this, right? Or Kanye West could benefit from anger management. Which is essentially a reaction. What time is it? Okay, I'll finish off here. So to sum this all up, managing anger, right? Managing stress. Some people go into a rage, venting rage. Let's say Kanye West, right? We're just using popular people here. I can't control, I need to respond, I need to have a reaction, an emotional reaction, an emotional release, right? Failure to cleanse the rage, magnify anger, make you go off the rails and do something completely crazy. It could backfire. What you thought initially was gonna be solve the problem, now it's made everything 1,000 times worse, right? Here are some anger management strategies. Wait is a good strategy, which means like, hey, don't quickly respond, you need time to think about it. You need to be more cognitive. Find healthy distraction or support and distance yourself. Which is great. You guys need a release. Yeah. You have to find some sort of place to meditate. Go to a quiet coffee shop. Read a book. So back to myself, I'll end off here is you have to ask yourself, why do you care so much? Why do you care so much about all this stuff? And actually, is it really important? Because all this stuff is in your mind, school, work, life, family. Is it really that important? That's like a real thing to be asking yourself constantly. And what you find, typically what people find is, it's not that important, right? Whether you get it done or don't get it done, I don't know, that changes the entire course of your life and what you're trying to accomplish, or who you're trying to be. I don't know who you're trying to be. But, I'll end off with that, but just remember, think, wait, process, and why do you care so much? Any questions? All right, I'll see you next class.